birds, you start, cycling around and you can hear the wheat growing. It's amazing. So, into the preamble. So, right now, in international circles, we discuss the need to understand a convergence of multiple crises that our generation is facing. So you have the migration crisis, the financial crisis, the planetary boundaries crisis, you have the economic, you have the social, there's a convergence, there's not one crisis. And gradually, the international community is realizing at the same time something that Einstein has said much longer, that the same mindset that has created this convergence of crisis cannot solve it. And we had many, many scenarios that we can project into the future from where we are as generation. What is going to happen to the ecosystems, to humanity, to the cities? 2/3 of humanity living in cities. Cities cover today 3.8% of the surface of the planet, and they consume 87% of the natural resources in a linear way. So now what's going to happen to the cities? In Europe, 4 of Europeans will be living in cities by 2025, which is very, very close. So we have all this information coming. How are we going to be able to redesign our human presence? Not with the same mindset. And within permaculture thinking, there is something that says the solutions within the problem. Sometimes you only need to change the way you look at the problem and the solution would come. And another strategy is about looking at the problem, the solution within the problem, but also the second one is about maximizing edges. And maximizing edges is something that I've learned. I have my great-great-grandmother was an indigenous woman. She was a Guarani. And she was lassoed by my great-great-grandfather 3 generations back, who was a Portuguese. So inside of me, I have always run the two bloods, the oppressor and the oppressed. The captive and the captive and the one who captures. And this is not unique in me. In Brazil, many of us are like this, And within this paradigm, of being in 2 zones, we as a whole generation also are playing 2 roles. We're playing the role, many of us have a foot into a dying civilization or paradigm. So we're kind of nurses of a dying world. And we also midwives of something new that is emerging, like what, the whole kind of a constellation of stories that Kosha was sharing with us. It's about those who are feeding into the new. They are those who are the cutting edge of the new experiment, how is to live together and rebuild trust and also rebuild this deep connection with the natural systems. So the convergence of multiple crises, the solution within the problem, maximizing edges. So my great-grandmother would say, when I was walking, and she would say, when you're walking and you see sweet waters like rivers meeting the ocean, or savanna meeting forest, when 2 ecosystems meet, pay attention, because this is a place where the earth rests. Pay attention, because these are places that we humans should not step into it, because that's where the earth rests. Therefore, we humans should preserve these places. In the edge between 2 ecosystems, you have all the species that is from forests, for instance. You have all the species from the savanna, and you have those species that are unique to that buffer zone. So if you maximize the edges, in a way, you're maximizing life, because diversity is very strong in the edges. And that's what Gaia Education is doing. We are born out of the eco-village movement. We have deep roots. We are all eco-village educators. We are living the paradigm. We're not discussing in the corridors of power of the UN what are the language that needs to go in the Sustainable Development Goals. We were living the paradigm. We have decided to diminish our ecological footprint, to do a shift between quantity and quality. We were living the paradigm, but at the same time, in my yearning to contributing to my generation, I would imagine that sometimes living in the laboratories is too constrained. The laboratories need to have permeable membranes, breathing in and out into the world so that we can start influencing change. So when I moved to Findhorn, 1992, just after the Earth Summit, I realized Findhorn was implementing the Agenda 21, most of the chapters, from bottom up, without even knowing there was such an agenda. But now, 20 years later, we know there are agendas, we know we are builders of the agenda before the agenda has been discussed, and we do what we call the technical term, which is the vertical integration. Because if you do this precise scientific vertical integration, as if you're doing a meditation and you're reaching out towards your teacher, your ashram, whatever you belong, if you do this, and you feel that there is electricity, there is a current that comes in, and when the current comes in and you have this, when this wire is connected, there is more possibility of you growing horizontally. So the vertical and the horizontal are really important. And I guess today, Kosha did an incredible presentation on the horizontal fabric of the eco-villages. And I didn't know what she was going to present. It was a surprise. And so I'm adding into her and saying, okay, so here we go. That's how we can take this body of knowledge, of experience, of dedication, of healing, of engagement, of transformation, of deep listening, of renewable energies, of local food productions, of ecological house. We bring all of that and we do the vertical integration. And then we can unleash the power. So above, as above, so below. So let's go to this possibility. So these are the geese. And you can see here our dearest Hilda. She was the last meeting that she was with us last July at Newbold House in Findhorn, just after the celebration of Gen plus 20 and Gaia plus 10. And these are those who, during 8 years, we will meet in different parts of the globe to develop what later on became our DNA. Next one. So, mission statement. Gaia Education is a leading edge provider of sustainability education. And here, when we say we are leading edge, we didn't say we are the best ones. We are really at the edge. We are maximizing the edge of sustainability education because our experiment comes, our body of knowledge comes from real experiments of sustainable living. So we can say we are a leading edge because we are in the edge. Sustainability that promotes thriving communities within planetary boundaries. So we're talking about the dance between the social and the natural world. Next one. And we do work within the larger frameworks. And right now there are 2 very large frameworks that we are fine-tuning, preparing to deliver and conduct more courses. As you know, 2015, I think it's going to be remembered as the historic year in our generation because we signed 2 great agreements. I mean, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals Agreement, It was the most inclusive process in my 22 years of United Nations. I've never seen an agreement being so consulted. There was 7 million people consulted. This means 10% of the humanity were involved in the discussions. And then you got this whole consensus of 196 member states into a common ground, into a framework. Of course, it's not perfect. Of course, we, the laboratories, are ahead of them. But now they caught up. And if you're not careful, they're going to run, because they not only have the conceptual framework, they have the policy, they have the finances, and they can take the whole world together into flying to sustainable development. So there was a moment in the year 2014 that 2 agendas met. It was a really important moment, because we had the agenda called the MDG, the Millennium Development Goals, which was to develop. It was an agenda being proposed by the Global North to the Global South to implement. We were about to launch 15 more years of this development agenda. At any cost, we need to take people out of the poverty. And then you had this other stream coming from the Earth Summit in 1992. And then the Johannesburg Summit 10 years later. And then we had Rio +20 saying, listen, we have no more time to develop now and clean later. We don't have any more time. Postponing action is not any longer an option. So we needed really to merge the two into the Sustainable Development Goals. So we are, when we do this vertical integration, we certainly are doing this alignment of passion and purpose. Next one. And this is the whole systems design tool. This is the tool that the GIS has created, and we have revisited that. We are in the 5th generation of the syllabus, and we talk about, when we talk about redesigning our human presence in the world, we're talking about redesigning the social relations, the economic, the ecologic, and the worldview. Some people, even UNESCO, refer to the worldview as the cultural one. But this is our main DNA. Let's go to the next one. And within this DNA, these are all the programs that we are kind of streaming to the world. We teach online, we teach face-to-face, we go to bioregions, we go to schools. This is the ecosystem. Everything related to flying together is the flight, the wing, the sky, the landing, the nest, the estuary. And most recently, we have been invited to have our programs, certified programs, also being certified by UNESCO. So we have lots of, I would say, facets. Our impulse has many facets, but they're all guided by this DNA. We need to balance the 4 aspects, and we do this in communities of learning. Next one. This is our presence in the world. We started by teaching only in eco-villages, but very soon we started to go into different places, so ashrams, kibbutzim, slums, R&D centers, universities. Today, I just came back yesterday. I'm teaching in a medieval city of 20,000 people in the mountains of Sicily. It's the first migrant design education. We're working with 22 migrants, Afghani, Bangladesh, Pakistan, many West Africans, into a 5-week course. Is a new kind of, completely embedded into the eco-village, into the DNA, into empowering them with the skills for their social, ecological, and also economic integration. Here we go to the next one. Partnerships with the UN. As I mentioned, I've been working in parallel with Gaia Education, been working with the UN since before the Gaia Education was born. And we run programs together. We have constant conversation and dialogue into the community-led aspect and the international aspect. And one of the most recent dialogues is regarding the SDGs, which is hopefully is the next slide, which is this. So you have here the DNA, and then you have the 17 goals. And when you look at them, and when you study the goals, and you study also the targets, you see that our programs for the last 10 years have actually been already giving the tools for us to advance the goals. And so in a way, the SDGs framework is coherent to what we're doing. There is a mutual reinforcement between the two platforms, what we do on local level and what the world is preparing. All governments are preparing because they all preparing into the implementation of this framework for the next 15 years. So we don't need to go into details, but we've done all the homework that we go through every goal and went to the targets, and we're looking at how the targets are really being tackled. How can we're really giving the tools for us, for our trainers and our students to be able to go out of our courses and be able to articulate the language and to have the skills, because one of the most important things is about the language, how we communicate this to our constituencies. We are now running a first training of trainers because we've been receiving a larger demand to start doing more of these programs, and I'm happy to say
21 hours.
That's me saying I'm speaking a lot. I need to too much speaking. So anyway, let's move to a film then. So this is the economic design, the vertical integration between what you do. These pictures are all in our classrooms, apart from the UN. This is my house, Barrow House in Finghorn. This is Gaia Education offices here. Our office is in a recycled whiskey barrel. And that's where my girls were born. Next one. And next one. So this is all the SDGs and the situations in our classroom where we are already advancing, discussing, enabling, equipping, all these verbs that integrate the larger international convention in our curriculum. Next one. This is just to say how happy our students are with us. We are between excellent and good, 94% over 11 years, which is really high. Wow. This is really, it's just that, yeah. And this is adding all EDs that have ever happened, they have to report in Survey Monthly. Yeah. You've done this in your? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then we add everything. So the next one, I want to get into the film. So that's what I want to say, that, you know, we run these face-to-face programs, 96% of satisfaction. We run programs online, but also out of necessity, we start doing what we call the project-based learning. So this little film of 4 minutes will tell you better than me, how are we working with this concept of maximizing edges as we advance both the climate change and the Sustainable Development Goals agenda in the world. So let's watch for this film, and I need to see how we do that. I think it's working.
Edge is the boundary or interface between two biological communities. Let me show you an example. These two ecosystems each contain 3 species, but in the region where they overlap, they produce conditions which can now support 3 new species, increasing diversity. This is the edge effect. Gaia Education is working within the edges all around the planet, together with local communities, building capacity and increasing environmental sustainability. Women, land, monsoon. In the edge between these 3 territories live the tribal women of Koraput. Recently, insufficient rain has dried the soil, limiting the yields. The edge between the traditional ways of food growing with drought-tolerant plants and permacultural approaches are bringing back the fertility of the land and nutrition of their meals. Communities, climate, livelihood. Bangladesh has experienced drastic weather conditions which are having devastating impacts on the lives of the local people, especially in the vulnerable coastal areas of Khulna and Bagharat. In order to improve their livelihoods and break the cycle of food insecurity, people from the local communities have been trained in organic agricultural practices, which have generated yields many times higher than in the past, and empowered the local women to secure their livelihoods. They are now producing enough to sell the excess fruit and vegetables in the local markets and have greatly strengthened the community's resilience. Desertification, knowledge, empowerment. In the region of Podor, in northern Senegal, poor land management coupled with the adverse effects of climate change have led to severe soil erosion and infertility, along with pest susceptibility. By nurturing the villagers' skills and knowledge in permaculture, agroforestry and sustainable settlement design, the project is progressively empowering men and women to ultimately guarantee food security and increase income generation. Women have been improving soil fertility, developing effective water management systems and ensuring crop protection through natural herbicides and fish tonic. Each village now has its own nursery using recycled plastic containers to grow seedlings that are to be used as trees for farming in the future. Migration, agroecology, integration. Each year, thousands of migrants attempt a dangerous journey across the Mediterranean to Europe. Many of them are trying to escape poverty, climate, and war. Sicily has always been a crossroads of agriculture. It has the largest surface of fertile organic land and the highest number of organic operators in Italy. Sicilia Integra supports the socio-economic integration of migrants through agroecological capacity building activities while contributing to the fair trade of organic products in Europe. Urban sprawl, biodiversity, community. Villa Brasilandia is one of the largest slums of South America with over 260,000 people. Fed by a constant influx of rural migrants, its steady growth puts overwhelming pressure on the urban forest Cantareira, one of the remaining greenbelts of Sao Paulo. Designed for sustainability and community, attended by students ranging between 20 and 60 years of age, has fostered their ecological imagination. With their new urban design skills, Brasilandia designers are now maximizing the edges between urban forest and city, health system and community gardens, ecological building and favela construction, local development and social enterprise. Transformation, film, living memory. For over a decade, Gaia Education has been maximizing edges while promoting thriving communities within planetary boundaries. From communities of learning to zones of influence, we have witnessed hundreds of stories of transformation. We are now embarking on a journey of turning testimonials into living memory through film. And you know what? Even in the way we are filming, we are maximizing edges.
From this point, open a dialogue with you and maybe even ask you what you think are the edges that you are facing right now in Denmark. Because from our perspective, whenever there are edges, there are opportunities. It's just a question of reframing, and looking in a different way and looking with different eyes, and then suddenly you see opportunities. So maybe it's a question that I pose to you, but also I'm open for comments and reflection, what you've seen, what you want to know more about Gaia Education, and how we can collaborate further in Denmark.
So, comments? Questions? Yeah, thanks.
I was in Ghana recently on an EDE there. I was teaching in the EDE in Ghana recently, and the students were very happy with the teaching, but I found a certain discrepancy between the expectations they obviously didn't have so much expectation, that they were very happy with what they got, but there was a lot of lacking in the course actually, and I wonder how you can get satisfaction feedback, but also some more objective feedback about how the infrastructure, the whole preparation of the courses are.
Well, we have 3 moments every certified course goes through. The first one is the certification. Whoever organized your ED had to fill a questionnaire, had to prove that had the infrastructure, they had, there's a huge criteria to fill. So once you're certified and you commit into having an evaluation from the students that they do either via SurveyMonkey, or the people will kind of, if you don't have, they have to fill it out. So this information I brought this here is somebody who works for us from Edinburgh University, that every year she goes to the SurveyMonkey and she analyzes the trends. So I'm not sure how much they have feedback, but I can even check if your course has, but I think over 90%, because if you run an EDE and if you don't bring back the results of your students, you can never run the next one. So it's like it's a reflection. In terms of preparation, you need to commit to cover the 4 modules, the 4 dimensions, and 5 modules in each one. 5 main topics of each one. And so again, this is the organizer. And then we, over the years, we have made a research, and we have a series of learning outcomes, which are here, that the courses need to achieve. And the teachers need to develop their content. My morning session need to be able to be aligned to the learning outcomes that is part of the DNA. So where do you think there was something in this system I described that didn't work?
The promises about commitment to doing all this were probably in place.
Was not in place.
The promises were in place.
The promises were, but the reality was not there.
The reality was not, and I think that the reality check of you can say the organizing feeding back, they can take, as we say in Denmark, paper is grateful. But I think that it's necessary to have a better feedback.
I'm interested to talking more with you to see where was where we didn't get this information from.
They're still working on it.
I don't even know who is the community that hosted?
It was in Kita.
Oh yes, it's a new first time that we certified this. Yes.
It's very recent. It's
just finished, isn't it?
March, yes.
Yeah. Well, there was great excitement with my certification team because it was the first time that we were working. And I must say, from our side, we were really excited. So thank you for feeding back. Maybe we can talk more. Okay. Were you involved in this one in Kita, Ghana? Was Jen?
I was there for the last. It was. It's a beautiful collaboration actually between the Danish Eco-Village Network and the Ghanaian Eco-Village Network that led to the course, and I was there for the last 2 days and the conference that followed.
So that's why the Danish teachers see.
And I think it was a typical example of the clash between cultures, where African way of doing things meets European way of doing things, and interesting dialogues appearing in the space in between. And France had the very high challenge of working with the local Ghanaian team for the whole 4 weeks. So you were really there for the whole 4 weeks. And then Camilla came, I think, for the last 2 weeks, and I was there for the last 2 days. But, we saw what we always see is the huge inspiration and excitement of the students, and that they really, as you say, they touch the DNA, and they sense that they're onto something. So I would say again, the outcome of the EDE, which is the Ghanaian Eco-Village Network at the moment, is vibrant. I get emails like every third day where they share new information about mushroom growing, about water systems. They just got information today that we received a funding for follow-up projects. So I would say it was a very successful EDE, and I would agree that the local infrastructure of the local holding team had gaps.
Okay. Yes, okay, here we go.
Okay, we take this one
Oh,
first
yeah,
and then over
okay.
here. Yeah.
So first of all, you communicate hope with and without words. So don't worry about the camera thing. Because in the media today, there's very few signals of hope. And as I see, that is one of the most important issues. So basically, I'm just saying, please keep up your work and let's continue our collaboration with the media, because we're going to put this on national TV in different places in the world. This is the time, right, to use the media to elevate consciousness.
For those who don't know, Peter Enver is a filmmaker, and he's doing a film about education as one of the first parts of a series, right?
Yes,
Yes.
and it's coming together very well.
Good.
And May is one of the
Participants.
diamonds of it.
Yeah. I think we had a question over here. Yes.
Can you share if you've had some discussions about key performance indicators? I mean, how do you actually measure the success of what you're doing on the actual outcomes? Not on number of people who've been educated, but on actual influence of the environment. How do you measure?
So there's first the conceptual framework and then the measurement. So we have learned over the years that since the very change of 1999 to year 2000, we shift from networks to communities of practice. There was something very new in the beginning of the century of organizing ourselves as networks, as we realized, like Finn Horn met Autoville that met the farm, and so we became networks and we established the Eco-Village network in 95. So the cutting edge was really network. And then we realized that networks, if you don't do anything more, the networks become a little bit flat. So you needed to turn bring more life into the networks, and then became the education. That's how Gaia Education was born. Jen was working okay, but there was a need for new impulse. So Gaia Education came, and Transition Network was the same. Transition came, and then Transition Training came. So it was like turning what you're doing into communities of practice and learning, because as you start learning, you re-energize again. And then from communities of learning, the next level is fields of influence. When you start really having patterns of learning together, you can start influencing this local authority or that government, and suddenly fields of influence. So then you start really seeing that you're contributing to the evolutionary journey of humanity, but not until you start moving from networks to learning together, to turning to fields of influence. You don't know very much how much you're changing. And then when we talk about change, there's two levels for change. There's the level one that is like new content in old bottle. And the other one, which is a really paradigm change, which is new content in new container as well. And many of us are working, first of all, we put in new content, but the structures are the same, because that's all we have. And then some of us suddenly, and that's what's exciting with the SDGs right now, because suddenly we have we don't have anymore the mantra, development, development, development. We cannot stop, economy cannot stop. Let's continue consuming, because that's how we generate GDP and wealth and this and that. We're saying, listen, we cannot afford to continue developing the way we were doing, because we don't have enough the carrying capacity of the planet. So I would say that fields of influence will come up. So that's a more general framework. How can we measure into numbers? That's a different thing. So because we work with United Nations and with the governments, we use basically the strategic framework of Gaia education is something called a log frame, which is a logical framework where you have impact, you have output, outcomes, outputs, and indicators, milestones and indicators. So everything we do, we then have the milestone, we have the baseline, and then year 2016. Today, for instance, I came to present the outcome of the last year to Gaia Trust, and I mentioned the outputs, the milestones, and what we have achieved. So it's everything is, it is quantitative and is also qualitative. And in this conversation, we also bring in the satisfaction of the students, and we bring in, satisfaction is one of the many questions that they have to answer. And then we tabulate once a year, we go to this survey monkey and we organize that, and we can see the patterns. There is one document which is the Gaia Education Plus 10, which I can give you a copy. I have many copies inside of the house. I'm not sure if I have here. That we have many infographics for the last 10 years. We've done a whole study on, and it's interesting enough to see that, for instance, in Asia, our project, our programs, normally they're 100% satisfaction. And the way we read that is that in Asia, you don't have so much a culture of feedback. People like, why in South America you have, very angular feedbacks, where people say what they think, So it's very interesting how it changes from one, but we have the metrics. We need to have, I cannot afford, if I don't have my metrics in place, I cannot tap into funding from UK government, Scottish government, EU. You need to have your metric in places. You cannot, it's wonderful to tell the stories that we tell, because the stories touch people more than the numbers. But if you don't have the numbers to base how much you have cut your carbon emissions, you're saying you're low carbon community, so tell me, how much have you cut? What is your baseline? How do you compare? Like Finn Horn claims to be the lowest ecological footprint ever measured in the Western world. This is by Stockholm Institute. But then you go back to the report and you see, how they have compared Finn Horn to other ones. Oh no, it's not the lowest of the world, but it's the lowest compared to other settlements in Europe, but they have only analyzed 4 other settlements. So you need to go into depth to see where is this, So so metrics are important, and I think we can always do more. But at the same time, I would say, as a mother goose of Gaia Education, we have every Monday we have management meetings, and my mantra is like, how are we going to grow corn of this? What is our circular economy? And then I'm always bringing the economy back into what we're doing in a circular way. And I say, by taking this decision, which of the milestones, which are the outputs that we are advancing? And sometimes my team say, but May, you're such an intuitive leader. Why do you need log frames? I say, well, this is my compass. This is how I can answer your question and the question of my funders with a log frame.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you asked, your first question was how you see Denmark and how Denmark can...
What are the edges?
Yes, what are the edges? I'm from Denmark, but I have been living outside Denmark for the last 15 years. I've been living in Russia. I'm here today with a Russian group. And I'm coming back to, I came back to Denmark in January, to a country where the consciousness about sustainable living is on a very, very high level. And there's no doubt that here in Denmark, this is part of more or less everybody's daily life. And from my point of view, the edges is that it, and where I think you can help is that this consciousness should not come from a narcissistic point of view, because sometimes there's a little tendency to that Denmark, we kind of close itself, and we are good at this, and this is what I'm saying in trying to say in Russia, but sometimes it comes from a narcissistic point of view instead of an altruistic point of view, and that's where maybe a project like yours could go in and say, hey, we're doing this to heal the world, and not be afraid to say that. And I think we in Denmark, we are on a level where we can say this a little louder. And I would be happy if we could say so high so we also could hear it in Russia. But that's another story.
Well, you see, sometimes all that we can do is like the leaf, the metaphor of the leaf that heals the tree. All that you can do is be the leaf. You know, you can't really deal with the whole tree. Yes, yes, but any comments on what she said from the other Danish colleagues? You want to comment on that?
I would like to say I really love what you're doing, and it's really beautiful. And but I think the most important thing is to get our children to understand what you're trying to tell us. Also the Danish children and the children of the West. You tell a lot about developing countries and places with troubles and so on, but my dream is to, I'm in the phase of starting a house in Copenhagen to promote all of the things that you're saying. I really love it, and I want the youth of Denmark, of the whole world to understand this, but I wanted to make it as a play, make it funny.
Yes.
And not boring, or not like books, but maybe like a dance or like a play and music and.
We say in the eco-village movement, if it's not fun, it's not sustainable. So we normally have lots of fun in our programs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would really love to make this house.
Okay.
To have a lot of kids go through every day and to learn all the stuff that you tell us.
The school program.
Yeah, so it's a good timing as well, because right now there's an interest from schools coming, because we start with eco-villages and start growing and diversifying, and now we have schools wanting to adopt. There's two trends. There's one that is called Gaia in schools, but that existing schools that want to take the curriculum. And we have an incredible example that just happened in India recently. It was a 9-month course. It was called Design for Sustainability Back to Basics. This was kids from 10 to 12 years old in a public school in India. And they went through a whole journey, 2 months, each one of the dimensions of sustainability. And the parents were really, really nervous, because they say, oh, they're taking them from the normal curriculum, what's going to happen, da, da, da. And we got some news recently that out of the 100 students, top of the big school, Indian school, the first 20 top students, 15 were those who were part of our course. So it was an incredible reinforcement to the Indian school that actually, if you bring the more participatory way of learning, and you bring meditation and play and caring for the earth and lots of activities in composting and gardening and this and that, this has enriched them, and they actually went very well into the exams as well. So that's Gaia in schools. And then there is another tendency in Estonia right now. There's the national school want to become a Gaia education school, which is completely different. And we are developing now the criteria for Gaia in schools and Gaia schools. We can talk more.
I really think that the interesting thing is to integrate your stuff into our stuff.
Yes.
Because at this point, I'm looking at a lot of elder people, sorry to say, but we need to get into the young people and of course into the minds of people like me and make them feel interested in doing so.
Yeah.
The values in our society at this point are going in a very wrong direction, and you are leading in the right direction, but it has to integrate somehow. And I really love it, but...
That's what we call maximizing the edges. It's not
Exactly.
coming and reforming the whole thing. It's like the good, the beautiful, and the truth that there is existing in the system. And what can we bring and what can we create in the middle that has meaning and significance.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Over here, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want also to share that I do think there's an awakening also in Denmark. I also represent the Danish eco-village. And I think we've reached a stage now where it's not enough just to live in our cozy little eco-village, but that we do have a responsibility to invite the youth, the children, the grown-ups, everyone, to come and see and experience and live in these living examples. So I think that awakening is there right now. And in the Danish Association of Eco-Villages, I think we take that very, very importantly, developing also workshops, school programs and so on, qualifying people in eco-villages to carry that task and lift eco-villages from being more like living centers, but also to be educational centers. So I think that movement is there, and I think it's progressing quite rapidly right now.
Yes.
Hans, I think you had a final question.
I'd like to ask something about maximizing edges about different cultures, because on one hand we have a very high awareness in Denmark about a lot of this, but we also had a right-wing government for quite some years and had some setbacks that were almost unimaginable like 5 or 10 years ago. And I'm very curious about what, if the concept of edges somehow applies to this true thing, because we can be very optimistic when we look to what's happening on our side of this edge, but there's definitely happening something terrible on the other side these years. So what would the maximizing edges mean in this context?
Well, I would use a Maturana principle to address your point, which is like the Chilean biologists that say every force for innovation normally encounters the same pressure for conservation. So it's like giving birth. I mean, the women here that have given birth, you know what I mean. It's like when we are in a labor, you know that you have this, in English it's called contraction, but you cannot use this C-thought as contraction, because you have this huge pain that enters in your system, and every wave of pain, if you contract, you go against the flow, you have the pain to go through you, because by coming through you, you open up so life can go through you. So it's like the contraction, the forces of conservation in biology is proven that when there is something new wanting to be born, there is the force of contraction wanting to hold this back. This is part of biology. So it's like, I guess, all the conservative force is holding back something that is coming out with the forces of spring floods. There is no way of holding back, because we have two scenarios ahead of us. Transition is going to happen. Either we are going to design it, or we are going to be victims of it. And what we are doing is about designing the transition. So I have no trouble with forces of conservation, because I know they are ephemeral.
Thank you. That's a beautiful way to end your talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.